All right. So, with the recent passing of James Earl Jones, the voice of Darth Vader, and various other things, I'm going to read an article that talks about the state of Star Wars. Let's get into this. Okay, so this article should be interesting. This is by the Spectre World. There's a picture of Kamala Harris riding a donkey. So that should give you an indication on which direction that these people lean in. This is an article written by an Alexander Larman. The video game Star Wars Outlaws is to be released this week. The game is set between The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi, so in the universe of the original series. Still the greatest trilogy. Okay, so it sounds like he's a fan of that particular aspect of Star Wars, and has been several years in development, according to its narrative director, Navid Kavari. We didn't just look at the original films. We looked at George Lucas's own inspiration, Akira Kurosawa, World War II movies like the Dam Busters and Spaghetti Westerns. You see the care that was taken in that original trilogy to make it tonally consistent. We need to make this feel like it has high stakes, lighthearted humor, emotional tension, growth between characters, and the hero's journey. All of which makes this expensive game rather more exciting than the usual run-of-the-mill fare. The player takes on the guise of a Vaz, a young woman who lives by her wits and is planning to a heist to pay off a syndicate. This sounds vaguely like the crime picture trappings of the unsuccessful Star Wars prequel Solo, then you wouldn't be wrong. Ever since Lucasfilm was acquired by Disney in 2012, there has been a tendency, by now bordering on some sort of compulsion, to mine as an intellectual property for any profitable purpose. It's not a compulsion, it's just how corporations operate. They don't operate from making new stuff. They acquire things that have already been worked on and just keep cranking that out, because when you work on something new, you actually have to pay someone and give them time to actually formulate it, make a story, design characters. All that takes time. So it's easier to just give somebody money and just use what they have. So in the case of the first of the Star Wars sequels, 2015's The Force Awakens, has led to a vet financial success, glowing reviews, and a rejuvenated interest in the series because it was a good game with a good narrative. Some people didn't like it, some people did. I really liked it, and it added to the mythos of Star Wars without taking away from the story. And that's the biggest problem with modern writing, is they don't know how to do that. Because when you have an existing story, there's a lot of wiggle room and not a lot of wiggle room. You have rules that you have to apply to whatever you're writing. So you can't just make something crazy, because George Lucas in the prequels decided to give R2-D2 jets on his legs so that he can fly. So it's just like, well, one, why would you take those out? Because it makes them less efficient. And two, why would he not use them in Dagobah? But that's the problem when you do a prequel. It's like you get newer ideas, but you can't really use them because it doesn't apply to the overall story. But I digress. In fact, it was better than the mediocre George Lucas directed prequels. Right. Another two films that followed the divisive Last Jedi and the ridiculed but actually quite entertaining. I would know because I didn't watch it. I just watched the reviews of it, and those were entertaining. The Rise of Skywalker, then the floodgates open. Some of the films, TV shows produced by Disney, the Disney regime, have admittedly been splendid. Rogue One was thrilling. Yes, I actually enjoyed that. It delivered sheer spectacle and fun better than any of the Star Wars sequels, despite or because of the downbeat ending saw the death of the principal cast. Its prequel, Confused Yet Ender, was also popular, earning a Star Wars television series for people who don't like Star Wars. That is an odd thing to try to get normies to watch your show, but okay. And it didn't work because people didn't watch it. Although, to be honest, it's hard to see why such people would bother watching. Like I said, Likewise, The Mandalorian did well in its first 2 seasons, although last year's third installment was less enjoyable and less watched. The first season, I think it was hands off and they let Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau kind of do what they wanted, so it was entertaining. And I think the way that it was supposed to go is the first season was him acquiring Grogu, and then the second season was him trying to figure out where to place him at, and that's how it was supposed to end. The popularity of Grogu and The Mandalorian made the Disney or Star Wars story group dip their oar into their pool and screw the story up, because people didn't really like the second season nearly as much as the first season, because the second season was a whole lot of Dave Filoni inserts of characters that he created just popping in for reasons. And the third season was confusing to a lot of people, because at the end of the second season, Grogu went with Luke Skywalker and they had Boba Fett in the middle. And if you didn't watch Boba Fett, you didn't know that Grogu went back to The Mandalorian. So a lot of people started the third season and was like, why is Grogu back with Mando? Nevertheless, there are a feature film, Mandalorian and Grogu, planned for 2026. They don't know how that's going to make any money, because people aren't going to really care by then. It's planned for 2026 as well as a possible fourth series. Okay. And this is where Disney has got it so spectacularly wrong. What's happened is the Marvel-ization of Star Wars. Marvel fans were once entertaining, unpretentious adventures with some slight winks to comic book connoisseurs. They became a hugely complex, virtually incomprehensible behemoth spanning several different platforms. The same is now true for the expanded Star Wars universe, where it has become increasingly difficult to keep up. There are now too many TV shows to list here, and in recent news that The Acolyte, the latest release, was canceled after one series, and Tactic acknowledged that the flabby franchise is faltering. Yet they still come, and the latest December Star Wars Skeleton Crew appears to be a family-friendly adventure about children adrift in the galaxy. All right, Jude Law, suitable parental Jedi, guiding them on their way. Law deserved more sort of medal for the number of franchise he's been given gravitas to. Well, what with his appearance in Harry Potter sequels, yada yada yada. If you are old enough, the difference between how Disney is doing this and how George Lucas did it is there were very few movies. You had a movie, 2 years later you had another one, and so on and so on, and then he ended that particular story. In between, they had books and comic books and various other things that came out that flushed out the story. Now, the way that they wrote all of this stuff is, yes, they added to the lore, but they didn't do anything that changed the basic skeleton of Star Wars. So you had adventures of Luke, but the character wasn't fundamentally changed by his adventures. He grew some, and it filled in the middle where he was at the end of Empire Strikes Back and where he was at the Return of the Jedi. You get me? So there's a lot to work with. So you can tell all kind of stories that allow him to mature, because he was mature at the beginning of the Return of the Jedi, such as with the prequels between Revenge of the, I can't remember what Revenge of the Sith, the second one and the third one. You got the Gindi, I can never pronounce this dude's name, little short cartoons that was in the middle of that. So you got the ending of the second prequel, and then you got the beginning of the third movie in the prequel, and it gave a lot of stuff in the middle. So you got the Clone Wars, you got everything that filled out, that led you up right up into the beginning. But again, nothing that was created messed with the skeleton that is the story that George Lucas was telling. With this and what Disney is doing, every person who's writing stuff is screwing with the skeleton of whatever story that they're trying to tell. So because you keep doing that, and then you keep changing how people are and how they act and all this stuff, it makes no sense in the overall story. While you're trying to fill in gaps, you're opening up new gaps. Get me? So, and that's why that is failing, because that is basic storytelling failing. And Disney should be good at that, but apparently they've either got rid of everyone who knew how to do that, or what, I don't know. I was too young to appreciate Star Wars the first time around, but a generation of film fans, directors still talk admiringly about the sheer effect that seeing the pictures had on them. Yeah, because it was 1980. This was something new. Nowadays, you get special effect laden movies that is commonplace, but this was not the thing back in the 80s. But amid a decade of which cinema had become far more cynical, that there was still wonder and breathless fun to be had. Today, exploitation of Star Wars ideas and iconography for the gulping chasm of streaming means that the wonder and awe have been swallowed whole. Yeah, like drowned in a bathtub kind of thing. I sincerely hope that Star Wars Outlaws really does live. No, it's not. Because it will be one of the few offshoots of an incredibly tarnished brand does a long time ago in a galaxy far away, was essential viewing, but now it's just there, a product to be consumed or ignored, like 99% of the rest of the streamers. For anyone who has this child still somewhere inside of them asking to be awestruck, it's a pity. From what I understand about Star Wars Outlaw, this is a Han Solo story. This should have been a Han Solo story. For whatever reason, they either couldn't use Han Solo or didn't want to, so they thought that you can just stick some female into this story, have her act like Han Solo. Even one of the DLC things that you get is her wearing Han Solo's outfit, and that it would fly. Story-wise, it's bad. Graphic-wise, it's bad. There are comparisons online of this game and games that are 10 years old that look 10 times better, play 10 times better. So this is more not necessarily this is not an indication of the decline of Star Wars, more so of the decline of Ubisoft. Because this is an Ubisoft game, it's filled up with all the usual Ubisoft type crap. This could have been good, but it involves someone who understands, like I was saying before, you have the basic skeleton of what this story is. You cannot deviate from that, the basic outline. You cannot deviate whatsoever. So interjecting people into this story that have a major effect on that is not good, because it will turn off your customer base. But Star Wars is big enough where you can actually tell a separate story, but they did not do that. She had to go to Tatooine. She had to go talk to Jabba the Hutt. It's basically, like I said before, this is a Han Solo story without Han Solo. And people ain't going for that. So while I agree, and I'm surprised because I thought that this article was going to be something different, it wasn't. So I got to give it up to the guy who wrote this. It kind of threw me with Kamala on the donkey on the top, but this is actually an interesting article. The decline of Star Wars is a bit more, it's not necessarily nuanced, but more than what this guy says. This has more of an indication of the decline of Hollywood and them being able to tell actually good stories, than the decline of Disney. Disney does not do a good job of telling good stories anymore because they got rid of everyone who knew how to do that. But that's my opinion. That's the end of this particular video. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you have anything you want to say to me, just say it below in the comments. I'm out. Later.